call and then have you guys select.
So I should start that now.
Yeah,
Well, once we get to the light.
You got the light on?
it's on.
Okay, it's good.
Oh, okay. All right.
Swing the gavel, buddy. Swing the gavel.
You gotta vote.
So, good evening, everybody. We're going to go ahead and call the Planning and Zoning Commission special meeting. Okay, please rise for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Take roll.
Now we do a roll call.
Yep.
Yep. Carrie?
Here.
Hampi?
Here.
Schlauer?
Here.
Stephenson?
Here.
So then now will be the section which is the ceremony announcements, appointments, and presentations. So as part of this, the first thing that we're gonna have to do, because the chair and vice chair is not present, we'll have to elect a temporary chair for this evening. And so it'll be up for you guys to decide who you'd like to play the role as chair for this evening.
Nominate James.
Second. Sounds good. Everybody good with that?
Yeah.
I don't think we need a vote or anything.
That's cool. Works for me.
Then as a side note, it is International Fisherman Day and the National Day of Joy. So,
Cool.
live it up, James.
All right. So I take it from now, I guess. All right, I think we have some amendments to the agenda.
Yes, we do. Under public hearings, which is item number 4, item number B, the zoning recommendation for the requested Froelich zone change, and the zoning recommendation for the Joseph Family Trust annexation. Both those applications had requested a later date. Temporarily, we're shooting for July 25th at the earliest, but we'll be coordinating with the applicants on a date that'll work for them and notice the public accordingly, of which I will note that we do post on our website and at the city. So if anybody who's watching wants to follow, keep watching our website and keep watching our public hearing notice for when those come forward.
Cool. So tonight we'll just have the special use permit for the fire station and Hydrilla Estates zone change and looks like subdivision.
Correct, item A and item C.
All
Yep.
right. Sounds good. Any declaration of conflict, ex parte contacts, site visits?
No.
All right. None? All right. Consent calendar, Mr. Manley, please.
Yeah, item A is the minutes from the June 14th, 2022 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. Item B is the zoning recommendation for the point zone change, file number RZNE 1/2022.
All right. Any questions on that from the commission?
I move to approve the June 14th consent calendar as presented.
I second.
Well, that would be June 29th's consent calendar for the
June-
minutes on June 14th, just to be technical, I guess.
No, it's
that good?
the June 14th consent, right?
Well, today's the 29th. It's the minutes from the 14th and the zone change on the 14th. But, yeah.
Move to approve
Yeah.
the consent calendar as
Yeah.
presented.
Consent calendar as presented. There you go.
Cool.
There you go.
So, I think we already had a second.
Yes.
Second.
Okay. Stephenson?
Yes.
Carrie?
Yes.
Schlauer?
Yes.
Hampi?
Yes.
All right, next item is citizen issues. This section of the agenda is reserved for citizens wishing to address the commission. An issue that is not on the agenda. Persons wishing to speak will have 5 minutes. Comments related to pending public hearings, including decisions that may be appealed to the city council, are out of order and shall be held for that public hearing. Repeating comments regarding the same or similar previous addressed are also out of order and not allowed. Comments regarding performance by city employees are inappropriate at this time and should be directed to the mayor by appointment in order to ensure adequate public notice. Idaho law provides that any item other than emergency required to be placed on the agenda for an upcoming item. As such, the commission cannot take action on any items raised during citizens' issues, and the same meeting will be requested additional information to be placed on a future agenda. Does anybody have any issues that they'd like to bring up tonight? All right, doesn't look like it. So we'll move into the public hearings. And
We
our
got
first,
Unfinished old business.
oh,
And
I
there's-
skipped that.
And there is none.
Unfinished all business, there is none. So now we'll move to the public hearings. First one up will be Kootenai Fire Station Special Use Permit. John Manley to present. Open the hearing.
Good evening, Commission. John Manley, Planning Manager here, presenting the KCF Station Number 3 Special Use Permit request. The owner of the site is Kootenai County Fire and Rescue, and the applicant representing them would be Miller Stauffer Architects. I believe the Kootenai County Fire is here, though, to speak on their own behalf. The requested action is for special use permit approval to relocate the Kootenai County Fire Number 3 to the southwest corner of Prairie and Charville. They'll be moving their facility from 16th Avenue near Highway 41. Here's the site that they're moving from. That's a little further south on 16th. And this is the location they'd be moving to on that southwest corner of Prairie and Charville. This is the northern tier of what was known as the Tullamore PUD. This has been planned for some time as part of that PUD to develop in this direction. You do see here the zoning in the area. The mustard yellow, that's R1 zoning. You can see that's what the site is at this time. To the east, you have R1 single-family lots, and then you have some medium-density housing and higher-density housing here in the red, which is the Community Commercial Services zoning district. To the north of Prairie, you got the text mix, that's the hatch, with some more CCS, community commercial mix, to the northeast of the site. The water provider for the site would be Ross Point Water District, wastewater being provided by the City of Post Falls. Here's some brief facility details, the acreage of the site. Here's some future land use. You can see here it's in the low density residential, with business commercial to the east and to the north. Here is the kind of intent and kind of uses kind of highlighted in the area. You see to the west, Ross Point Water District has a site. We got a future regional park here planned for the City of Post Falls, and there's those uses mentioned a bit ago just to the east of Charville Road. Here's their proposed site and their plans for their fire station. Looking at the review criteria for a special use permit, the first one is looking at whether or not it will or will not conform with the purposes of the applicable zoning district. You can see here that in the R1, the S, that's that special use permit that allows them to come here and ask for their facility. Whether the proposed use constitutes an allowable use established by the chapter of the zoning district and complies with laws, ordinances, and regulations by the city and state. Once again, this is allowed within code within that bulk emplacement table. Whether the proposed use will or will not be compatible with the health, safety, and welfare of the public and with the land uses in the vicinity. You can see here in the staff report that the proposed use did not seem incompatible with the surrounding land uses. Transportation, you can see here that the proposed special use is not anticipated to produce negative impacts or adversely negative impacts on the transportation system. Water would be water reclamation, it would be connected to our wastewater facility, and then Ross Point would be serving the water on the site. Some goals and policies that's associated with that fourth criteria here is whether or not the proposed use will or will not conform with the comprehensive plan goals and policies. Goal 5, keep Post Falls neighborhoods safe, vital, and attractive. I would think that fire service plays a role in that. Goal 5. Goal 7, looking at planning for types of quantity of land uses in Post Falls, looking at community needs that may, play a role in this decision, involve the community and the community of Post Falls and local government in planning and decision making. Here's some other policies that may be deemed applicable, especially policy 50 there and 52. Here's the agencies that were notified. Here's the responses. Cooney County and Fire and Rescue, they have a blanket. They work with the city and coordinate with us in all of our development review process, be it private or in their own facility. Post Falls Police Department, they commented as neutral. DEQ had their typical general comments, and they're more related to the time of development. And the school district added their comment, and they were neutral as well. There is the 4 review criteria. Do you have any questions for me about the site and the location?
I do have a couple. Will there be any buffers up? Like, I know right now it's, one side is, there's two roads, Prairie and Charville. So will there be any kind of a buffer?
Typical in this situation, how this is laid out with, you got other uses on the north side of Prairie or on the east side of Charville. We wouldn't apply our buffer requirements in our code because of the road and the separation there. Looking at the water district, we typically wouldn't buffer between 2 different service providers like that. And our land use and our buffer requirements doesn't specifically, would not consider those as incompatible uses.
Okay.
The regional park, we heard nothing in the routing from the Parks Department, this site creating a nuisance. So off the cuff, there wouldn't be any base buffering required for the site.
Okay. Will there be full-time employees there? at
That
the
might be a good
station?
question for the applicant when it's their
Okay.
turn to discuss, like, what the role and how many employees will be on site permanently.
And where do you generally have a fire station? Like, what is the current zoning designation that the fire station is in right now?
See if it shows that. What they're currently in, I don't know. We can go to that. There it is.
Depends on which station you're talking
So.
Probably the 16th station.
So you can see here for fire and rescue, the different zones. A lot of your commercial and your heavier intense uses, they're permitted outright.
Okay.
And then you see in your RM, your residential mix, and your residential zones, there is a special use permit. The
Okay.
reason for that is potentially it may be a good site. Potentially, though, there may be some lower intense uses, single family, 1 acre lots. If one went there, there may be the buffering element that you brought up.
Okay.
Maybe something that you guys as a commission would want to apply in your
Okay.
decision.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. That's all I have.
Anybody else? Any other questions? All right. Have the applicant come up. And then just a reminder, if anybody wants to speak on any of the public hearings, fill out the forms in the back and turn those into Amber.
I'll do, you could have this one?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay.
Chris Way, Fire Chief, Kootenai County Fire and Rescue. Thank you, Commissioners, for the ability to come and speak tonight on our proposal. So we got this land in 2011. Well, the deal was finalized in 2011. It was given to us as a land swap partially, and at that time, it was actually zoned with a mixed use. It changed to R1, but it's always been our intention with the city to put a fire station on this location. It's been long planned. We've actually had done a study, I think it was 2012, about fire station placement. And given the growth to the north and the 5,000 anticipated single-family residences north of Prairie, between that and Pleasant View at some point, we felt like we had to get farther north than our 16th station. So this is going to be a one-story station with a little bit taller roof on the over the apparatus bays. The apparatus bays will be on the south side of the complex there. To answer your question a little bit about buffering, although there won't, on the rear towards Ross Point, there's actually a berm that buffers it some, and then there will be fencing, and it'll be a secure facility from the park side as well. There will be full-time employees. There's room to have up to 8 full-time employees. Initially, it's going to be staffed with an engine and a single resource, so there will be 4 to 5 full-time employees there, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with the ability to put an ambulance there at some point, which would up it to 7 employees there per day on a daily basis. The facility is about a little over 10,000 square feet, and that's the site plan, as you can see. We're obviously hoping to change the zonings. We think this is a prime location for emergency response growing in our growing community. This fits into our master plan, and so people have asked what we're doing with the 16th site, and I think Mr. Manley did a good job in his staff report of talking about, we will be selling that, but we will be covering southern responses by adding the 5th station, which it is already zoned commercial, so we won't be coming back and asking for a special use permit, but it's going at Celtice in between Hutter and Highway 41 at our training center. So we are splitting the coverages there and actually adding coverage to the city of Post Falls. I'm glad to answer any questions, or if you would like more, I'm glad to provide any more.
I just have one quick question.
Yes.
When they're put in neighborhoods like this, when the fire station, is there some allowance for sirens and stuff? I mean, do you try to, if you can get out as far as you can before you?
So a couple of things with that, yes, we do. And obviously, we're sensitive to that.
Yeah.
And we work with the city too on traffic control. So eventually, in the long-term plan, I know there's a thought of having a traffic light there at Charlieville and Prairie. And we have controls for traffic lights out of stations. So you wouldn't have to necessarily, I mean, if we could control the traffic light right away, we wouldn't have to hit the sirens right away. And we obviously take into account time of day and things like that.
Okay.
And then I would say that's probably to your point too. We've designed this facility to be very compatible with the residents in that area. It's not going to look like a commercial building. It's designed to look like a residence so that it does not stick out in a residential area like a sore thumb.
Yeah, we have a picture.
When did you anticipate that to be started and finished?
How fast can the city get it through the planning
Okay.
process? The plans are drawn. We
Okay.
had to come and get the special use permit. I mean, it was part of our bond last year, so the money is sitting there. The contractor selected, literally the plans are 98% ready to go to the city. I would say this was part of it. We had to do a couple of other things, but we anticipate hoping, if this, heard the time frame of 2 months to go through the permitting process earlier. If that's the case, we'd love to break ground at the end of August, but if you told us we could do it August 1st, we'd do it August 1st.
Okay.
And it's
Thank you.
about a 12-month time frame from beginning, from first shovel in the ground to opening the doors.
So will you shut the other one down only when this one is open?
Only, yes, because the staffing is already there for the one on 16th, so we won't move anybody until
Okay.
that's available.
Could you explain one more time what you would take, streetlight wise, for you folks not to have to, run the siren in the middle of the night as you pull out past the residential
So
next
at
door?
any controlled intersection, so lighted intersection, we have what they call an Opticom device. It's a controlled device where we can, through whether it's the ambulance or the fire truck, it has a light emitter that controls the light so that we would automatically get the green light if we had our lights on.
So you wouldn't have to run the siren?
We wouldn't have to unless there was traffic. I mean, obviously, if it's situational dependent. If it's going down Prairie at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I would tell you, if it was me, I'd use the siren, just because if you've driven down Prairie at 4 o'clock in the afternoon lately, you got to get people out of the way. But I would also say that if it's 4 o'clock in the morning, there would be not a lot of need to do that.
And I could say, just as an additional commentary, That's why in our comprehensive plan, this being in a principal arterial, given that it's that designation, long-term, you're gonna end up with more traffic, more sirens, more light pollution, more noise pollution, and why generally discouraging lower density along some of those major arterial reduces that conflict. Sometimes it makes sense as we see east-west along Prairie, but at other times, we will get these higher impact uses both in the built environment and just with the traffic long-term. So just wanted to point it back to the comp plan and some of the policies. That's why we have what we have.
Yeah, I think the policy's good, but we do have quite a lot of residences across the street from it that are probably not gonna be real happy about the sirens is the downside.
How often
Be
do
nice to have the
you,
light.
They're super happy about it, though, when they have chest pain at 3 o'clock in the
Yeah.
morning or their house is on fire.
Exactly.
how often do you usually, how many, I guess, emergencies do you?
Well, that station, the current Station 3, it runs about 12 calls a day, 11 to 12 calls a day. However, you're gonna be splitting some of that, so I would say it's gonna be a little bit reduced, because with the 5th station, you're gonna be splitting some of that call, so
Okay,
8 to 10 times a day.
Okay.
But not every call is an emergency call with lights and sirens either.
Okay.
We do what we call priority dispatching, which the reason they ask you the questions when you call 911 is because if you say, my fire alarm's going, or my smoke detector's going off, we don't go lights and sirens. But if you say your house is on fire, we do. So we also gauge the type of call to determine whether or not we're using lights and sirens. There's a lot more to it than just whether and what time of day it is,
Okay.
there's call information and where the closest piece of apparatus is and things like that. And we have policies, internal policies, to try to gauge some of that helps all of those things.
Any other questions?
nope.
Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you. Citizen issues?
None.
None. All right. So in that case, I will close the hearing and move on to our, make it quick. All right. Give her a second. Fill that out.
Oh,
I have a question for the city staff.
Shoot.
Do you guys have any immediate plans on a light at that intersection, Prairie and, is it Charlieville?
Charville.
Charville?
Good evening, Commissioners. Robert Paulus, Assistant City Engineer. Our Transportation Master Plan does have that intersection identified for a future traffic control device, whether that be a roundabout or a traffic signal that would be analyzed in the future as to which one's going to work best for the situation, taking into consideration a fire department or fire station at that location that would weigh in on that decision as well. As far as time frame, we don't have a firm date as to when that's going to be built. That's going to be determined more upon when traffic volumes reach the level that for safety reasons and to move traffic efficiently, we should put in a traffic signal. Prognosis, we do have the tech park immediately to the north. As that starts to develop and get businesses and other uses in there, that would probably be the impetus to get that signal or other traffic control device in that intersection. Answer your question sufficiently?
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Okay, and we do have one citizen that wishing to speak, and I'm going to butcher your last name here. It's Alicia.
Actually, it's for action item B.
Oh, okay, so it's not for the fire station. Okay. We'll hold it.
So if it's for Frolic,
Oh, yeah,
then that one we did move to another date.
that is true.
At the soonest will be July 25th, a Monday.
That is B, yep. Hydrangea is C, okay. So it's for the Frolic? Okay.
The sign posted out the corner just even today said it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was some adjustments last minute today because of just the size of the commission tonight. They opted to postpone to a later date, unfortunately.
Re-noticed with the full public
most likely the 25th?
That's what we're shooting for, is the 25th. And then, like I said, and as part of the intro, is continue to watch our website. We're going to post it. It's on our website. We'll put on the noticing. We'll put it on the site again.
But thanks for coming down, and we'll hope to see you next
Yeah,
time.
apologize for the confusion. Just sometimes these change for various reasons, and this is just one of those nights, unfortunately.
We had another cancellation for a different site earlier today. That's for a future date. Luckily, we got that one in time before we were able to notice
repost
it.
Yeah. All right. So anybody wishing to speak on the fire station?
Question I have to ask.
Can we have you, yeah, if you want to come up, you can,
Just,
well, you got to come up to the, so we can get everything recorded.
that would be, it's not for the fire.
Oh. No, it
Well,
has to be for the fire.
It's got, well, at this point, it has to be for the fire. We've passed that.
Do you have any city staff that could answer a question for her, maybe in the
Yeah.
back?
Yeah.
Come talk to me.
Keep her moving.
There we go. Keep it moving. Thanks, Russ. All right. So I'm going to close the hearing out, and we'll start our review process, right?
That's you.
Well, he's got to,
We need him up there.
he's got to pull up his little, we don't have our cheat sheets tonight.
Nothing.
Okay, so we'll be going through the review criteria and the discussion pertaining to the development of the reasoned decision. First one is looking at whether or not the implementation would or would not conform with the purposes of the zoning district.
All right.
Right. So it is.
I think in the zoning code, this is, it's a R1, and it definitely says special use permit, makes it allowable. Anybody have anything else to add?
No.
Pretty straightforward there. And the next one is whether proposed use constitutes an allowable special use as established by the chapter of the zoning district involved and complies with all applicable laws, ordinance, and regulations of the city and the state. Pretty much what we said in for the first criteria.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, it does. It's special use.
Criteria C is whether the proposed use will or will not be compatible with health, safety, and welfare of the public or with the uses within the vicinity of the proposal. I think Mr. Manley kind of hit this on. You know, I think we can all agree that having a fire station and more of them in the city is definitely going to help with the health, safety, and welfare of the city. Anything to add there?
Agreed.
Agreed.
All right. Criteria D, whether proposed use will or will not comply with the goals and policies found in the comprehensive plan. I think we did touch on this a little bit. What do you guys think?
Well, I think it goes along with our comprehensive plan and how we're building the city and having the safety within the confines of the city limits, and I think.
Right. Yep, agreed.
That's the 4 criteria.
That's it.
That one probably is where we would discuss the, you know, the location
Mhm.
and with the land use, and I think along the principal arterial, we're not gonna do better than that.
Yeah.
It unfortunately will affect a few folks that already live there, but I don't see how you get away from that ever.
But for an R1, it really only has them on one side, and, which is
Yeah,
beneficial.
yeah.
So I think for that reason, it works.
Yeah, and I mean, I live in Fieldstone. I'm not sure the closest fire station to me, but I hear sirens at least during the day. I don't hear them at night. So I think it's a good use because it's on that arterial right there, Prairie. And as the city goes farther and farther north, it's probably where we need it.
Agreed.
All right. All right, with the review criteria out of the way, I would entertain a motion.
Okay.
Okay. Are you gonna do it?
Nope.
I have my old approvals note, so I hope that's the right one. I move to approve KCF Station Number 3 special use permit, finding that it meets the approval criteria in the Post Falls Municipal Code 18-20 or 18.20.070 as outlined in our deliberation, subject to condition 1 contained in the staff report, and direct the staff to prepare a reasoned decision.
I second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Ampe,
Yes.
Schlauer,
Yes.
Carrie,
Yes.
Stephenson.
Yes. All right, next item. As we talked about earlier, Frolic 1 is postponed and will be noted for a future hearing. So the next item will be the Hydrilla Estates zone change and subdivision. John Manley to present.
Yes, so the Hydrilla Estates zone change and subdivision, file number ZC 22-2 and SUBD 22-8. So about 3 times the funds, since you have 2 different type items, and about 3 times the criteria. So the owner is Wild Horse Investments, LLC. The applicant representing the owner is Whipple Consulting Engineers. So the 2 requests, one of them, the zone change, that's going to be a request for a recommendation that'll go before the city council. The other request is a subdivision, which you do get to make a temporary decision on that. It'll be waiting as a placeholder for the determination on the zone change ultimately by council. But for the zone change ask for their recommendation, they're looking for a request to approve a single-family R1 from the existing R1S zoning on approximately 5.37 acres. And they're looking to create ultimately 15 lots on this land. Just some quick snippings on zoning and zone change. Just want to emphasize that the Land Use Planning Act, established in 1975, kind of is what facilitated the adoption of city code and the adoption and put guidance in our review criteria in these land use matters. So that's kind of the enabling statute there, Title 67, 65. Looking at the purpose of this Land Use Planning Act, they're looking at protecting property rights as well as looking for low-cost housing, encouraging urban and urban-type development in incorporated cities. And they also wanted to avoid undue concentrations of populations. What they mean by that, by looking at it undue, it's are you following the comp plan or are you not? So when you're following a comp plan, then it's a justified concentration. If you're not following the comp plan, it could be deemed unjustified potentially. Looking at planning duties, it was set out, this is more or less provides guidance to the comprehensive plan. Looking at that under specifics on housing, they're looking at creating safe, sanitary, and adequate housing within the community. Provisions for low-cost housing, also at the same time, looking at how you would accommodate manufacturing and mobile homes within your community. As you see here, they want to maintain a competitive market for all citizens within the community. So that's just kind of an overview of zoning and planning in Idaho. Looking at this site and this ask and the project location you see here, it's at the northeast corner of Howell and Fisher. To the south, you've got Prairie Meadows, which is larger estate homes. Directly to the west and east, you have more akin to R1 or a little bit larger R1 lots. The current land use out there, you have large lot residential. That's wrong. It's actually in the city of Post Falls. It's not in the Kootenai County. So it is over the Rathrum Prairie Aquifer, and the water would be provided by East Green Acres, with wastewater being provided by the city of Post Falls. Looking at the surrounding zoning, you can kind of see here that to the north and to the east, you have R1S. Going back to the area, you see the housing structures and development pattern is very unlike in R1S. This is because of PUDs that occurred in a previous code language. If this was to happen today, we would have rezoned those areas as R1 because you need to have like zoning with the PUD. So there's no longer this misconception with housing types and zoning. So that's how it would be processed today, but this is vested in some old processes that occurred about a decade ago. So there's those R1S. Some newer developments you see in the nearby, you do have R1 right here, south of Prairie, just north of this section of Hydrilla Avenue and those 3rd-acre type lots. So looking at the review criteria, we be first looking at, is the proposed amendment to the zoning map in accordance with the future land use map? And it is low-density residential. There you see it there. It's that light yellow. Low-density residential looks at and entertains all types of single-family, up to 8 dwelling units per acre. I highlighted here what it's currently, so it's currently compatible with the land use designation as well as what they're requesting there in blue, the R1. Also, you see the acknowledgements that densities may vary as appropriate. It's also within the Central Prairie focus area. I know in your handouts you have the Central Prairie as part of your booklet, but this is one of those pages in there. I believe it's page 28. I kind of highlighted the the points that would be pertinent potentially to this site. One here is probably the site is the support provisions for a variety of housing types and densities. That kind of goes back to some of my intro slides of being consistent with the elements of kind of the state statutes and our purpose of having criteria for zoning. Looking at the amendments to the zoning map, and it should be in accordance with goals and policies found in the comprehensive plan. Kind of might just, instead of reading them, just kind of go through these slowly. They're in your staff report. At goal 1 and goal 2, looking at goal 5, 7, and 12. They're all looking at more or less keeping good neighborhoods, safe, vital, diversified housing, supporting sustainability in the community long term. Some of the policies, policy 1 wants to support land use patterns that do the following. Once again, the staff report kind of goes into more of an analysis of these elements. Policy 2, looking at kind of elements here, infrastructure and service plans. You've seen in the staff report there are some conditions related to this as far as being consistent in the timing of some of the infrastructure, be it either sewer or street improvements, which Rob Paulus, the assistant city engineer, is present, so I'd probably defer many of those questions to him. Encouraging compatible infill development. Third criteria is looking for applying zoning, considering street classification, traffic patterns, existing development, future land uses, and community plans. Kind of went over kind of the main elements of the uses surrounding it. Fisher Avenue, minor collector. Howell Road, a residential collector. You can see here that the proposal is not assumed to have any negative impacts on the transportation system as a whole. Fourth criteria is pertaining to commercial and high density. They're not asking for that. Fifth criteria, looking at limited and neighborhood commercial and lower density being typically assigned as they proceed further away from urban intense activity areas. At this point in time and projected in the future, this area does not seem to bear any intense urban activity, so it would be consistent with that potentially, criteria E. Sixth criteria deals with industrial, and they're not asking for that, so that kind of wraps up the 6 zone change criteria. Any questions for me regarding the zoning element at this point in time and the potential recommendation?
No.
Nope.
No.
So moving on now to the subdivision. So when land use applications come in, oftentimes they apply and they evolve, and there's continued communications. There's communications before an application oftentimes, and it gets someone across the board to apply. They do all the research of all the infrastructure and all the details, and they submit an application, and it's deemed complete for processing. We get that in-house. We're working on other projects. We route it for comments, and then through the review and the public process, staff at times identifies items that need to be adjusted or perceived to be need to be adjusted to be brought to your attention. So one of those deals with, and I'll compare this initial subdivision plan here with the proposed modified subdivision plan. So in your packet, this is probably what you guys may have seen, where you see the extension down to Fisher. What staff has been planning for some time is the extension of Hydrilla over to Howe to improve circulation of that area and connectivity. Once again, any questions of why this is going, I would defer that to Mr. Rob Paulus. So that is, this right here is more or less the subdivision at this time that we're looking at reviewing and approving. The lot count is still 15. The lots would still meet our minimum lot size of 6,500 for planning and the minimum lot width. So they could still meet the lots size. They just shrunk a little bit on the west side to accommodate that road. So looking at the criteria, definite provisions have been made for water supply systems and adequate in terms of quantity, quality, and type of subdivision proposed. East Green Acres will be providing water to the site. Looking at, is there adequate provisions for the sewage system? So with coordination with the engineering department and public works, and as conditioned, it's deemed that it could be provided in conformance with our water reclamation plan. Looking at here, I do want, I thought there was, sorry, it must not be there yet. Third criteria, proposed streets are consistent with the transportation element of comprehensive plan. Kind of gone over that. Direct access from residential lots onto Howell and Fisher Avenue will be prohibited. That's condition number 8 in your staff report. Site is located over Rathdrum Prairie Aquifer. It's been stated. And that there's no known topographical conditions, and this relates to that fourth criteria looking for, is there any topographical conditions presenting hazards being identified. Fifth criteria, the area proposed to the subdivision is zoned for the proposed uses, and the uses conforms to the requirements found in the code. So one clarification that is an error in the staff report, condition number 1 said it was conditioned to the annexation review by council. That is not true. It's conditioned upon the zone change review by city council. So I'd want to make that amendment to the condition number 1 to acknowledge that city council is going to be reviewing the zone change. So in essence, with R1, you're reviewing that if city council decided to approve an R1, does this proposed subdivision align with the R1? They're kind of two separate matters, two separate issues. If you're zoned something, then you're reviewing the subdivision a little bit different. I've already stated that the proposed lots would be in conformance with the lot sizes in Title 18. Criteria 6, more or less, the nutshell of this is future paying its fair share. We do this in the city by impact fees and CAT fees being assessed at the time of permits. They pay water and sewer CAT fees as well as impact fees, and that's to attempt to mitigate the growth paying its fair share for its impact on facilities. Here's the agencies that were notified. Comments pertaining both these elements from the police department, neutral. CUNY County Fire and Rescue, they're going to maintain being in partnership with the city through the review process. And as typical, DEQ has construction-related commentary, and school district remain neutral. questions for me pertaining the subdivision?
I have one for you, John. Well, the condition 8, no direct access to Howell. How come you guys have that in there?
That's for the drive approaches. So when they go and they apply for a residential building permit on these, they have a choice to utilize the interior roadways, the residential roadways, for their drive approach onto their lots. So they wouldn't have drive approaches onto the Powell or Fisher, creating conflicts.
Not even like a secondary access for like a camper or something?
Nope.
Hmm?
Nope. And we do that for the safety of the corridor.
Okay.
Well, that
On-
would be the same regardless of the zoning, right?
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely, yeah. So, John, on three sides, you got R1S. The lots to the south seem to be a little bit bigger, but then to the north and the east, they're much smaller and appear to be like size of an R1. What's the comparison with the lot sizes?
You can kind of see here these lots look like they're about, visually, from my eyes, it looks like about 80%, 85% the size of the lots to the east of them. To me, they're a lot closer and similar to those lots to the east than the lots to the south of them.
Sure.
Looks like they're very similar to the lots to the north, maybe slightly larger. You're counting, these are 15, if you count here, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Looks like you get about 16, 17 there on the north 5, so
One or two
they're
more. Mhm.
very similar in size, I would say.
Okay.
And then as an additional note, there is this, if I can get this mouse to work. This is currently developing. If you drove out there now, you can see they've mobilized to do the construction of that site. The intent is to connect this road into the road to the east, and then they'll have access to some lots here with a fire access out to Prairie only. So more or less what planning and engineering's been looking at is, as these 5s, 10s, and 15s develop through time, how do you get an interconnected road network, get good pedestrian safety, and meet our access restrictions from intersections? So you can kind of see this unfolding. Ultimately, we'll have, I believe, a couple other parcels to develop. This one here will someday develop, and then there'll be the attempt to connect this road to the east, north, and then to the east, kind of completing that circulation at that location.
Is that lot you said being developed through the county?
This has been, good question, because on this map, it doesn't, we don't show annexations until,
So it's all the way
sometimes
through.
everything's
Okay.
not always current.
That's what I thought.
We've annexed this in, the boundary
Yeah.
line will adjust,
That's what I thought. I just couldn't remember. So,
and that did come in as R1 at that
Yeah.
location.
cool. Any other questions?
What about the structures that don't I see houses on there?
Oh,
Or
currently on the land?
That might be a good question for the applicant to find out.
Okay.
What's gonna occur. Sometimes they keep certain structures and they put lot lines around them. Sometimes it looks like this one here with a road being planned. My guess is they're probably gonna remove that structure.
I would guess. Okay, yeah, I can ask then when.
All right, that's a good segue. So let's
Okay.
bring up the applicant.
I'll set the timer.
Yeah, definitely set the timer.
Thank you. Good evening, Commissioners. James, thank you for jumping on the grenade tonight. You're doing a fantastic job.
No problem. Thank you.
I am Ray Kimball with Whipple Consulting Engineers. I'm here on behalf of Wild Horse Investments for the Hydrilla Estates annexation and subdivision. My address is 2104 Columbine Court here in Post Falls. So I guess really before I kind of get into the whole spiel of it, I'm going to take us back a long time to 2004 and 2005. So I got the opportunity to work for the developers of the Craftsman at Meadow Ridge. So I designed the subdivision. I was part of the annexation. I was up here in a different building giving the presentations for all of those. And so that was a phase 1 project, and the final plat happened in December of 2005. And this property was annexed into the city in December of 2005, and the annexation was phase 2 of Meadow Ridge. And so at the time, we annexed it as at R1S, and we were allowed to do PUDs that cut the lot sizes down and increase the density. And I think probably 5 or 6 years ago, the city changed code, and you can no longer increase density with a PUD. Well, when we annexed phase 2, it was always the intent of the developer. So the developer next door had it under contract and was going to build it out as phase 2. And then the real estate debacle and recession of 2007 hit, and everything just kind of went downhill. And so the property was never developed. It was never purchased by a developer, and it's to my knowledge anyway. And it stayed in the family's hands for quite a while until my client purchased it last year. The purchase, we started the project last year, started looking at it, doing concept development on it last year. And it took quite a while for the tenants, if you will, to leave. So it was under contract, and I think there were some family members, some ne'er-do-wells who were doing some nefarious deeds and less than legal things in the houses and buildings there. And it took a bunch of notices from the sheriff to finally get him out. And so in the meantime, we learned that about the sewer stuff, and I'll get into that later. But I just wanted to give you a little bit of a history of the whole thing, kind of where it was and why it came in as R1S, and then why we can't develop it today like it was intended when it came in 2005. But instead, we have to ask for a zone change. And so that's why we're here tonight. So, and John went through all this stuff. So as you can see here on the future land use map, it's low density residential. The project site fits in that. R1 is a zone that fits in that land use designation. With regards to densities, so we were talking about, someone asked up here tonight, what are the lot sizes and how does that fit with the densities? They're very, very similar. A typical, if you were looking at the minimum lot size R1 subdivision in Post Falls, those typically fall in about 3.5 to 3.8 units per acre. This is has significantly larger lots, and so the density is 2.79. The lots to the east are at 2, and of course that includes all of the acreage around. And so if you look at the 2 units per acre isn't quite exact, because if you look at it, that 2 units per acre, that includes this park and that open space. So it's not really 2 units per acre. It's, there are it's actually a lot denser than that. But technically speaking, that whole subdivision is 2 units per acre. So in reality, it's much, much closer to the 2.5 units per acre. And the zone change criteria doesn't fit with the street classification. So Howell is a local street on the transportation master plan, but it really kind of functions a little bit more like a collector in that area. It's at the half-mile mark that pops into Prairie Avenue. And so, but it's kind of right in there. The zoning fits. It does fit with the land use map. It fits with the street patterns, as you see in our subdivision application. We're really connecting. We're just filling in a little bit of a gap there. One thing that's, I guess, probably interesting to note is that an R1S zoning designation, if if it were to develop as R1S, we wouldn't do any internal streets because we couldn't. Because you have to have 1 acre lots. And so we'd have to just front them all on Howell. We'd have to stack 5 lots on Howell and just leave it there, and that kind of messes up the street stuff, which is one of the reasons why, well, one of the many reasons why we thought R1S was horrible for this, and that R1, which why it was always intended to be more like an R1 subdivision instead of an R1S. The lower density residential zoning is being further away from higher intensity urban activity. Obviously, we're quite a ways away from the commercial corridors. We're well over a mile away. And of course, we are in conformance with the future land use map. It's consistent with the R1 zoning. So I'll jump right into the subdivision plan. So as John very astutely mentioned, we came in with this, staff reviewed it and asked that for Hydrilla to pop out. So pop out to Howell. And so we went from an average, and you can't read it on there, but I did memorize it, and I have it here on the screen. So the average lot area on this layout was 10,761 square feet, so over 10,000 square foot lots. And then that road took out a little bit of the available lot area, so we had to squeeze them a little bit. But it only dropped the average lot area to 10,200, so only dropped the average 500 square feet. So we're still able to get really nice big lots in there that we think complement the neighborhood very, very well. It'll be a fantastic thing for transportation network in the area. The property to the north, right now as of today, only can come out through Arrowleaf Drive straight south. Now everybody has multiple ways out. It's much, much better. And so we think this is it's nice. It's really, really convenient for everybody, and this will add a nice, convenient transportation network and really kind of fill in that last bit of the puzzle. Another thing that's really important to remember is that there's a pedestrian pathway network that goes all the way around, and this is a gap. So this corner is a gap in that, and so this will fill up that gap and allow people to take nice walks all the way around, and then back in down through those subdivisions out along Prairie and then back in. So it's a really important part of the transportation network, especially the pedestrian transportation network. With regards to water, East Green Acres has got plenty of water. They've given us a will serve letter. With regards to sewer, it begs, I want to talk a little bit about this. This is kind of a little bit different than normal. So most of our subdivisions, when you see them, you see the typical improvements that are required for a subdivision are put in some sewer mains. And every once in a while you get the ones that, oh, you need to build a lift station. And in this particular case, there is some capacity limitations in the existing lift station on Howell, or not on Howell, on Fisher. But I brought up this, and I want to talk a little bit about kind of the regional sewer, why this has happened, why what's going on is going on. So right now at this corner right here, there is a sewer lift station that handles the majority of that northern chunk of Prairie Falls. So there's a big bunch of, there's probably 150 houses that go to a little lift station there. And I want to be, not everyone knows what a lift station is. It's a sewer pump station. And so, and what it is when you drive by, you don't even know what it is. It just, there's a fence and there's a sign that says sewer lift station, or, Grayling Estates lift station. What it really is it's a big concrete vault in the ground with pumps in it. And so sewer flows into it, and then it fills up, and then the pumps turn on, and then it pumps up to another gravity manhole, and it flows on its way down towards the plant. And so in this case, there are two current lift stations. One of them here at this corner of Idaho and Prairie, and there's one at the corner of Spokane Street and Prairie, and the city is taking them offline. So they're doing some sewer improvement projects that they were temporary lift stations, And so they're putting in some gravity sewer main that allows them to flow the way they were intended to in the master plan, which is a fantastic thing. It's great for the city. But what that does, and so the sewer from this area right here flows all the way down here, and it's going to flow all the way down here, and it's going to go down through here and then come down through this little subdivision here, and it's going to come down here and then goes down and it hits the Guy Road lift station right here. And that's a low point. And then it pumps to a little manhole about 50 feet away, and then it trickles on, then it goes back on its little gravity way to the west down here to this lift station. Okay? So that's what the sewer does in the area. And so when those two lift stations come offline, sewer was once going a different direction. Now it's getting more, which is why the Fisher lift station needs some upgrades. So this year it's going to get some upgrades. So they're going to be they're going to kick in some bigger pumps, throw some bigger pumps in the hole, and upgrade some of the electronics. And that's already, I believe, designed and slated for construction this fall. Should be operational. It's a pretty quick thing. So you pull the pumps out, put new ones in, change some wiring, change some control panel stuff, done. But let's talk a little bit about sewer and what does sewer look like. And excuse me for going a little bit long. Hopefully you can give me a little bit of extra time here. So what does sewer look like? How does sewer hit the flows? How does it go through the system? Okay. So we have typical wastewater systems have about an 8 in the morning peak. That's basically everybody showering, getting ready for work in the morning. It's on a weekday. And then it drops off during the day, and you get a low time right around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And then you get a dinner peak where people are doing dishes and laundry and stuff like that in the evenings. And then it drops off in the middle of the night. So why am I telling you this? Well, that's what happens upstream of a lift station. It's this natural little cycle where everyone flushes their toilets, and so when someone in Prairie Falls flushes their toilets, it takes about an hour for that water to get down to that first lift station, or to the Guy Road lift station where it first hits that lift station. When it hits that lift station, excuse my crude drawing, this is what happens. So, and that's kind of a weird drawing, right? So what you get is the sewer coming out. When the pump is off, there's no sewer coming out of there. There's no sewer. So there's zero flow. Then the pump turns on when it fills up, and then it's a certain amount. So it pumps. In this case, it's the number here was 50. So 50 gallons a minute, or in this case, whatever it is. Doesn't even matter what it is. So, and then the pump shuts off again. When it pumps enough, gets down to the shut-off switch, boom, shuts off. No more flow in the sewer pipe. And then, boom, turns on again. And so during the peak times, the pump is on for a longer amount of time. And so where am I going with this? So just because the upstream lift stations have been taken offline, the actual flow that's seen downstream of the Guy Road lift station, which would be the flow that's going to the Fisher lift station, ends up being the same. It's just the pumps are on for longer. And so that kind of leads us to, why am I asking this? Or why am I talking about this? So subdivision criteria says, have provisions been made for adequate sewer? And so that's where we get to the conditions. We have to make provisions for that. What do we have to do? And so it's supposed to be served. It's in the sewer master plan. It's got a sewer main poking right up at it. Goes right by the road, or goes right by it. So we have a proposed condition modification to 11, and there's a reason for that. And the construction of the subdivision cannot commence until the city of Post Falls completes reconstruction of the Fisher lift station, estimated to completion 2025, unless the city verifies that the improvements constructed in 2022 provide additional capacity to accommodate the development. Really, all we're asking for is for after the improvements happen at the end of this year, for the city to be able to reevaluate it and say, hey, you're good to go. And if not, we'll just put it on the shelf and we'll wait for 2025. So pretty straightforward. And we think this gives flexibility to the city to be able to say, yes, they go out there, measure it. So, oh yeah, turns out we do have some capacity. Because right now, they're using model information, model numbers, and, you know, they're not always accurate. So, and then, of course, you know, here's the subdivision. This is what it looks like. This kind of gives you the transportation network. You see my horrible little drawing in green that shows you what that subdivision that isn't there that's being constructed looks like. Shows you how we're connecting the transportation network. And then, is there any soil or topographical conditions that present hazards? You know, the previous owner let the neighbor guys dump some dump truck loads full of dirt on there. We'll take those out. We know about that. And does it meet the requirements of the zoning code? And if the zone change is approved by city council, then the answer to that, of course, is yes. If you got any questions or concerns, I'd be happy to answer them. Hopefully I didn't gloss over that too much or confuse things.
Anybody have questions?
Why was it not requested an R1 zoning designation?
In 2005?
Yeah.
You're really testing my memory.
Well, I would only presume that the planning game was completely different. PDUDs at the time allowed you to flex and go higher density with the R1S. And so
Yeah.
you'd end up with third acre, half acre lots, R1S. And that occurred until, as it was mentioned 5-6 years ago.
Right.
Then staff took it upon us. We're like, you know what? If someone's going to ask for something, let's zone it what the intent is. And so then we aligned the PUD with the intent of the end product because of the misconception of having zoned lots, be it industrial, commercial, or R1S with single-family homes on it.
Yeah. Really, the idea is that because there's no middle ground between R1 and R1S. It's either 1 acre lots or 6,500 square feet. At the time, it was one of those ways that we could say, okay, we want to go with an R1 type product, but we're okay with some limitations, and we're going to go with the bigger lots. And that was always the intent. And so that's the intent here today. That's why we're bringing the subdivision forward at the same time, is to show that, hey, we're going with the bigger lots. We want the nice wider lots, the 10,000 plus square foot lots instead of the 6,500s. The idea being is that, yeah, we're going to go with the bigger lots and to match the neighborhood a little bit more.
And that's where condition 1 comes in. It'll be all contingent upon that zone change request to city council. If city council denies the R1, then this proposal goes, the subdivision dies, and then if it was subdivision change, that would then have to come back for you with a different layout or something down the road.
Right. I guess more my question is, was the idea because they figured that they would get pushback if they wanted an R1? A little more, maybe it wouldn't be as acceptable to planning and zoning or council, and that may have been the idea. Well, if we say R1S, then we can probably change it and do what we want.
It was in all honesty, it was a much different time when it came to the attitude of subdivisions and growth and planning in Post Falls and what was acceptable. It was a time where subdivisions like Fieldstone, the public hearings for that went till midnight for something that today we think is just right in the middle of everything in a fantastic neighborhood. And so at that point in time, it was the path of least resistance, I'm sure.
Right.
And,
Okay.
And it was a way to get to really the same thing that we're looking for today. It's just today the path is different because the PUD option is now gone. And so now we're just taking a different route to the same end goal.
Okay.
And one thing that is still consistent in 2005 and 2022 is Prairie Avenue being an identified arterial. So you're transitioning is how are you going to transition from Fisher Avenue to Prairie Avenue? So that issue existed in 2005 as it exists in 2022.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions? All right. Thank you, Mr. Kimball. Do we have any citizens wishing to speak or not speak?
I have one.
All right. So we have Wade Jacqueline not wishing to speak. Perfect location for small infill neighborhood to help alleviate housing needs in our town. So they're in favor. Okay. That's it, just the one? All right. Any final questions for city before we close it out and move on to review?
Well, I guess I do have one. So where the condition number 11, which relates to the construction of the sewer lift station, and so we've seen this several times come through to us where we maybe can't supply with sewer. We can't connect to sewer right now, but when improvements are made, we will be able to. So we've seen that several times, but I've never seen this this part of it that says that if the improvements being done earlier are going to, we'll reevaluate and then we'll give you the, I mean, I've never seen it put that way in the conditions before. Is this, have you done that before? Have I just missed it?
We've done it for streets that I'm aware of. For sewer, I would like to maybe call up Rob Paulus. He's kind of helped some of the communication. I do want to identify the condition that's in your staff report is not the same as what Ray proposed. And so that's another thing I'd like Rob to comment is
We could pull that slide back up.
Oh, okay.
what condition are we, where are we at with that condition?
Okay, so 11 doesn't.
No, this
So-
is.
Does
so Rob,
not. So
this-
he wants it to be this one.
Rob, do you
Okay,
think that
okay,
this
got
is,
it, got
this
it.
condition modification that, that Ray's asking for here, do you think, I mean, your hands are tied that you can't allow it without the change to the condition? Do you think it's plausible that this could happen?
Engineering has been working with the applicant in getting to this stage. The bulk of what the applicant presented was very much in line as to some of the technical details of how sewage gets from point A to point B and how we do model it. And we took a look when we put our model together and took a look at the subdivision and the previous subdivision just to the northeast of this, the Stockwell subdivision. And we realized that we were in a location that when those two lift stations go offline, we didn't have enough capacity. We found a way to get a couple more pumps to upsize the Fisher lift station and put us into a location where we have enough capacity to handle what is built plus what is already subdivided and not built until such time as we improve the Fisher lift station. But there's a little bit of grayness in there as far as taking what the model shows, because there are some levels of basically factors of safety we take into account. We don't look at everyone flushing their toilets at the same time, but we do look at what is a typical pattern of how sewage goes into an area. We do take into account what is the typical length of time it takes to get from the farthest reach to the lift station as how that impacts. But the reality is when you get to the ground, not everyone follows that same exact pattern, and it's an average. So our Water Reclamation Department will be making and getting those improvements in place at the Fisher lift station. The two existing lift stations are going to be going offline within the next month. And after after those items are done, we'll be able to go out there and reevaluate and see where in that gray zone do we really fall? Were our estimates correct? Were they overcautious, or were we on the other side? And from that, we can make a determination, say, okay, yeah, these guys came in, we're really here, and yes, there is additional capacity to handle them, plus what else is not built in that zone? Or are we still at a location where we're not comfortable with moving forward, and they'll just have to wait till we upgrade the Fisher lift station, which Mr. Kimball said that the applicant would be willing to do that wait if that additional capacity is not there. So again, yes, staff would be comfortable with that revised condition 11.
Okay, thank you.
So can I just, so would it be my, if I understand this, there's no approved subdivisions currently there that would have to wait until 2024 or 2025? All of them should be able to be put on the sewer as you're, with these improvements that you're making?
Everything that is currently platted within the Fisher Lift Station's service area should be able to build out to their build-out density, or completely build on the lots that are there without overloading the Fisher Lift Station once we make the improvements that we have identified.
Okay, so there's nobody else waiting, like
There is
this-
nobody
like
else
this-
waiting. The
like
Stock,
this subdivision
the Stockwell
might be.
subdivision was kind of the proverbial last one in, and then we closed the door and we said, we're not gonna take anyone else
Okay.
in as far as new subdivisions until we get that lift station taken care of. The applicant proposed an interesting quandary as to the sensitivity, and if we were willing to go back and relook at those numbers after the improvements and see, were we correct? Is there enough room to get in 2.79 dwelling units per acre on five acres? The reality is that's not a lot of sewage, but it is in an area that we said no more growth, and it's a gray area, but we're willing to go back and say, okay, for this one, we'll take a look.
Would you take a look at otherwise?
At this point, I would say no, because you've got this one who's asked for it. We haven't made the improvements yet and taken stuff offline to see where we're at. To put that additional burden on just means you have that many additional people who you could tell them, sorry, you have to wait. So I would rather know the facts as to where we're at before we give anyone else this same opportunity, or actually look at this. These guys either come in or they don't ahead of the Fisher improvements, and then everyone else waits.
So you would prefer not to say, we're gonna promise it to you if it's there?
I can't
Or-
promise it to these guys.
If
or
it's
anyone.
there?
Right.
If it's there. That's
If-
what I'm saying.
oh, if
If
the-
we're promising it, if it's there.
For this
If
proposed
we-
subdivision,
If number 11 would be put in as proposed.
I don't have a problem with number 11 as proposed.
Okay, yes, that was my question.
Okay.
That was
Do you
it.
feel like number 11 protects the city interests for there being a provision to provide adequate sewer service?
Yes, because it says unless the city verifies that the improvements being constructed in 2022 provide additional capacity to accommodate this development. I believe it gives the city the latitude to make that decision as to whether or not there is additional capacity sufficient to handle that.
Is that easy to figure out?
That's,
I'm asking, is it gonna take man-hours? Is the city going to have to expend resources for this ask?
when we put in the new pumps, we will have to do a drawdown test to confirm that we're getting the capacity that we thought.
Okay,
That will give us the base information.
Okay.
Yes, there's probably, I'm gonna take a guess and add a little bit to it, but
okay,
maybe 4 hours of going back through the numbers, plugging and just double checking this to say, how much additional capacity do we have? Is it realistic or not for this project?
okay. Okay, that answers my
But it's
question.
not difficult.
Anything else?
Might be tough for you and me, Nancy.
It's a little easier for me because I'm paid to do it
It
every
would
day,
be.
yeah.
It'd take a lot of man-hours.
Cool. Thanks for that clarification. All valid concerns and good clarification. All right, so we'll move on to review criteria, close out the hearing. We'll start with the zone change review.
Oh, sorry, picked the wrong one. Okay, zone change review criteria. We'll go do it through the first one, looking at is the proposed amendment from R1S to R1 in accordance with the comprehensive plan future land use map?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yes, it is.
yes, it is.
I mean, the surrounding area is
Yes.
R1S, and
Yes.
it's all, it's all residential, but there is
Low
PUD, so
density
it is.
residential.
Yeah, yeah.
Is the proposed amendment in accordance with goals and policies found in the Post Falls Comprehensive Plan?
Yes.
Yes, I think
Follows.
that's consistent, yes.
Do you want any more?
Oh, I mean, it's R1S, but they got PUD, so it's gonna be like size, and so all the zoning is gonna look very similar from a bird's eye view. Lot sizes are very similar.
Okay. Zoning is assigned considering street classifications, traffic patterns, existing development, future land uses, community plans, and geographic or natural features.
I think that was covered with,
Yeah, it fits with all the development around it. It has some major fissure and some major streets.
Yeah, it starts filling in some of those connection of the streets as
yeah.
the land is developed. It also limits the ability to get out on some of those other streets, but does increase another exit for that north development, so.
Commercial and high-density residential zoning is typically assigned along streets with higher road classifications.
It's not applicable.
This one is not applicable.
Okay. Fifth one, limited in neighborhood commercial and lower density residential is typically assigned for properties as they proceed farther away from the higher intense urban activity.
Yeah, this one, I think it was mentioned that it's at least a mile away from any commercial activity, so it's a good fit there.
The last one deals with industrial zoning.
Not applicable.
Not applicable.
So Phil, would you like us to make the decision on this at this point in time?
Yeah, I'd go ahead and make the decision on the zone change, and then we'll go into the subdivision.
Yep. If anybody like to make a motion on the zone change?
I think I can give it a shot. Okay. I move to recommend approval of Hydrilla Estate Zone Change, file number ZC-22-2, finding the requested zoning of R1 meets the approved criteria in the Post Falls Municipal Code, as outlined in our deliberation, and direct staff to prepare a zoning recommendation to be provided to City Council.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Stephenson?
Yes.
Carey?
Yes.
Schlauer?
Yes.
Hampi?
Yes.
All right. That'll move on to City Council, and I'll move on to the criteria for the subdivision.
First criteria Have there been provisions made for the water supply system that is adequate in terms of quantity and quality?
Yes,
Yes.
I believe
Yeah, there's
will
a-
serve.
Green
yeah.
Acres Water.
Second one, are there provisions that have been made for public sewage system that the existing municipal system can accommodate the proposed sewer flows?
Yep. I think we might have talked about this one a little bit.
Yeah.
Yep. So there's gonna be a
But
condition.
it's subject to
Yeah, there's gonna be a condition.
condition.
Mhm. But it is addressed.
Well, and right now with the condition is not what the applicant is asking. So what the current condition is, absolutely.
Sure.
But what the applicant is asking may,
Depending on future test, but it gives the city and the applicant flexibility.
Yeah, I don't see where it hurts to have the flexibility to, I don't see any reason to tie their hands right now. If it works, then let them. If it doesn't, don't.
Sure.
So ultimately, would the motion field be toward the condition 11 as is in the staff report or as presented this evening?
We can
So-
include that in the motion.
Yeah, so in your
Presented.
motion,
Motion.
I would cover also the correction to
Yeah.
one,
Condition
condition
one.
one. And so I would cover the correction to
11?
condition 1 and 11 in whatever motion.
Okay. Move to review criteria 3. Proposed streets are consistent with the transportation element of the comprehensive plan.
yes.
Yes.
Yeah, it gives that connectivity to the development to the north and, limits access to some of your major streets in that area.
And just to clarify, there were two subdivision preliminary plat maps shown there, and the second one showed the connectivity straight through
To Hydrilla?
to Hydrilla.
Yes.
And that's the one that's being moving forward. The
Yes.
second map.
That's the one that the applicant and the staff have proposed for you guys to review and
Okay.
approve, conditioned upon that zone change
Okay.
decision.
Yeah, and I'd likely make that part of the motion as well, because I believe that was added as an attach, like basically an exhibit. So we'll want to,
Okay.
as exhibited.
Fourth criteria, the proposed subdivision, are there any soil or topographical conditions presenting hazards or have been identified to the proposed use, making it compatible with the such conditions?
There's none noted.
Yeah, I think Mr. Kimball said there was some piles of dirt there that they had no problem removing, but that was about it. Nothing was noted.
Nothing major.
Are the proposed uses, or the proposed subdivision in conformance with zoning and the uses and other requirements found in the code?
And again, that's considering the R1 zoning.
Well, yes,
Could
and
be.
it is. It
W-
is.
Will be at the time it applies.
Yeah, it meets the requirements of the different titles for zoning and subdivisions, yes.
6 deals with growth, paying for growth, and paying for its fair share. So is it consistent with criteria 6, looking at paying fees, furnishing land, and providing mitigation measures of off-site impact streets, parks, other public facilities within the community?
Yeah, I think so. In addition to the fees they'll be paying on that number of lots, they're also gonna create the pedestrian and vehicle connectivity we need, so very much so.
Okay, kind of wraps up the criteria for the subdivision.
All right. Thank you. So at this time, we'll do a motion, but then keep in mind the condition 1 needs to be amended. I think currently it says annexation approval, so it needs to be zone change recommendation. And then we need to consider if we want to change condition 11 to what was in the presentation. And then also the plotted subdivision, consider if we want to throw that in there as to what was in his exhibit in the presentation.
And
Is
that was Exhibit A10 in the staff.
Exhibit A10, right? Is there anything else, Phil, that should be at least thought about for the motion?
I'll make a motion. I move to approve Hydrilla Estates subdivision, file SUBD 22-8, finding that it meets the approval criteria in the Post Falls Municipal Code 17.12.60H as outlined in the deliberations, subject to conditions 1 through 12, with condition 1 changed to read subject to zone change approval, and condition 11 changed to include the opportunity for the city to reevaluate capacity after the 2022 system improvements are made. And I guess condition 13 would be that the plat map that is Exhibit A10 is utilized in essence.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call?
Hampi,
Yes.
Schlauer,
Yes.
Carrie,
Yes.
Stephenson.
Yes. All right, and then as just a reminder, public hearing, item D, the Joseph Family Trust, is postponed tonight. It will be republished in sometime in July, so just watch for that area on the internet and here out in the lobby. John, any administrative or staff reports?
None.
All right, commissioner comments?
None.
Did I do okay?
Really
You
good.
did great.
In fact, I think this, there could be a
Yeah,
change
I think you
coming.
did great.
I don't know about that. We'll talk about that later. All right. If there's nothing else, what's the next step?
Move to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
All right, so moved.